Sports Around the Bar. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. Somebody forgot to silence his phone again.
Don't know.
Whenever you're ready, Drew.
Don't know.
Are you ready for the show?
No.
I can't complain. I actually messed it up myself. So here we are, as unprofessional as ever, ready to talk sports with you guys. Drew, I know we've got a lot going on here for some off-season talk. We got some basketball tonight. We got some football tonight. We were even going to talk a little bit of baseball. We're going to be all over the sports map for everybody asking for that. Is there anything you're excited to talk about? I know your Chiefs made a big trade here.
I'm ready for this beer.
Yeah. Nothing else?
I'm ready to talk about the Final Four. Maybe, one thing where I said, I told you so. But, that's about it.
That's the only reason you're ready for it?
Yeah, pretty much.
I understand, man. It's always nice when you're right once in a while. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I want to start first with Emmanuel Ogbah on his way to the Chiefs. If you don't know, former Browns defensive end Emmanuel Ogbah, much maligned after 3 years of play in Cleveland. In fact, they didn't believe him enough to go trade for a defensive end from the Giants and Olivier Vernon, is now on his way out to Kansas City, who, if you haven't heard, needs some defensive ends. So this fits pretty well, right?
It does. And Jeremy, yes, we're always professional at all point in time. My tie's on, my suit's on.
Exactly, just under the Chiefs hoodie.
My hair's combed to the side, always.
Now, Jerry, I'm sure he's just excited to hear about UK getting their coach back for a little bit longer, if you haven't heard. We'll talk about that a little bit later, too, as well. But for right now, Ogbah on his way to the Chiefs. You're talking about a guy that has 12 and a half sacks here, Drew, across 3 years. He's 25 years old, so at least you're getting a young guy. Does this solve all the problems for Kansas City? Does this replace Dee Ford? Or do you see this as... I'm really interested in your opinion here because we haven't talked about it that much yet. Do you like this move from a Kansas City's perspective?
I mean, Ogbah's a guy that's never really reached his potential, quote-unquote potential. Everyone's looked at him as, this is the guy that's on the opposite side of the other pass rusher that I'm blanking out on his name right now in the Browns.
Myles Garrett.
Garrett, that's right. And this is a guy that was supposed to be there. He's supposed to be the stud next to him, the 1-2 punch, and he never really got there. I think he was averaging, 4 sacks a season? Yeah. Something that's not that impressive. And, not showing up to the non-mandatory workout session, I think, was the final straw being broken.
I agree. Do you like them getting an attitude problem out of Cleveland before it really has a chance to become a problem in the regular season? Because I do like the preemptiveness.
What is bringing an attitude problem out of Ogbah, bringing in someone like Odell Beckham Jr.? Is it talent that overweighs?
Yes, absolutely it does. I mean, you can have an attitude and put up numbers like Odell Beckham, and all is forgiven. You can't have an attitude like Ogbah and only have 4 sacks a season and expect to stay on a team, especially when they just traded for a replacement. This is the point in time where you need to buckle down. You need to shut your mouth and get to work and prove there's a reason you need to be the starter. Ogbah didn't really do that, which is one thing I didn't like about this. Do I necessarily like Kansas City trading for an attitude problem or a could-be attitude problem? Maybe not, but when you look at what they gave up, when you look at his age, when you look at where he was drafted.
Give up Eric Murray.
Exactly. So
who's that?
Exactly.
I mean, I know who it is, but who's that?
All I'm saying is I like it on that standpoint. As long as he doesn't cause any problems in the locker room, I think it's pretty clear he's going to get to play on this Chiefs defense. I like this move for Kansas City. I think this is one of those Moneyball things where we're not giving much up to get a guy that could be very good.
Right. He never reaches potential. And maybe it's Andy Reid. Maybe it's the Chiefs organization that brings out the potential in Emmanuel. But I do like it. I mean, they're giving up Eric Murray, who has played for Kansas City for the last 3 years, was drafted by John Dorsey. And John Dorsey's huge about it being his guys. I mean, talk about Kareem Hunt. Talk about a guy that's giving another one of his guys a chance to be something in the NFL. They bring in Eric Murray, who's also going to be a replacement for Peppers being gone. I mean, will he start? Who knows? Eric Murray did have his best season last year. He's getting about 55 tackles, 1 interception. But this is a guy that really hasn't done a whole lot in his NFL career.
And let's talk about that best season, because while you're saying he had his best season, the Chiefs have historically one of their worst on defense. So does that really matter? Honestly, to me, when I look at that and I look at the way the Chiefs defense is played, it wasn't necessarily the pass rushers. It wasn't Justin Houston. It wasn't Dee Ford. It wasn't anyone on the defensive line, really, that was the problem. It was the secondary. The safeties didn't play well enough. They absolutely got dominated pretty much from week 1 to week 16, 17, 18 into the playoffs. When I look at this move, I'm not going to sit there and say this guy replaces Jabril Peppers by any means. Maybe you get a quality backup. Maybe you get a guy who can step in when you have an injury and give you a couple games that kind of bridges the gap. But Cleveland didn't hit a home run here. This was all about shipping away a problem before it becomes a problem. And I think that has some merit to it, but you can't sit there and call somebody a winner who's basically just gave you their car because it might break down in the future.
final scenario, when I look at this, I like the trade that Kansas City did. We need defensive ends. We need pass rushers. A guy that has not reached his potential just yet, who has the good power move, who has a lot of strength in that defensive line, pushing that offensive line inwards. I mean, this is a guy that's going to bring a lot to Kansas City. Now, can we get his potential out? That's yet to be seen. And Sharif says Jake likes a move by the Chiefs. I was surprised by this too. I thought I'd hear the opposite.
When you commit highway robbery, it's hard not to like it. I mean, you're getting a 25-year-old pass rusher.
You're selling a little short on Eric Murray.
And I'm not. Again, I don't think Eric Murray is the worst player in the NFL, but I don't think Eric Murray is a starting safety. I don't think you go into this year and say, well, we have Eric Murray. We don't have anything to worry about. You're always looking to upgrade from that kind of guy, and you're giving up somebody in Ogbah who's 25. He's a pass rusher. He's, even though not having the most success, 4 sacks in the NFL, especially if you work a rotation, is not the worst thing in the world. Again, I don't think either one of these guys is a superstar. But when you look at who would I rather have, give me 25-year-old Emmanuel Ogbah over a safety for Kansas City that just had the worst defensive secondary in the NFL.
John, what's going on, man? Shay, I'm glad you could join us. Deo says, a different team, he has a chance to shine in that D.
Well, you traded away everybody else, so somebody's got to rush the passer.
I think he's actually, I think he's actually talking about Eric Murray. I think that's who he's talking about.
All right.
I think that comment came in when we were talking about Eric Murray. I could be wrong. Deo, let us know if we are. Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The Cleveland Browns defense last year is a lot better defense than what Kansas City put out on the field last year. So it could definitely be a huge difference. Maybe Eric Murray could find himself. If we're talking about Emmanuel, I mean, how worse can it get?
You go from 4 to 0 sacks.
I mean, but
you could be an attitude problem. But let's face it, Kansas City's defense is nowhere to go but up. You already traded away.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. So how worse can it get? I mean, you're going to start on a defense that doesn't have a starter at the defensive end. You're going to get that position. Even if they draft 2 rookies, at some point in time, you're going to find yourself on that field. If they traded for you, they're expecting you to play. So, I mean...
But my point here is, again, Olivier Vernon, good defensive end, not an elite defensive end. He would be rotating with these guys. He'd be rotating with Myles Garrett. To sit there and have this kind of attitude... Does Emmanuel Ogbah really get the... Should he really be doing this? Is this the right move to sit there and kind of create a problem before there is one? Because I don't know about you. I'm a little old school in this mentality of, okay, they just traded for a defensive end. He should have, like I said, buckled down and said, I'm just going to beat this guy out. I'm going to prove there's a reason why I need to be the starter. Instead, he's like, oh, well, maybe I'm not going to show up to some of this stuff. You know the trade demand was coming down the line as well. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think he quit. And if I'm the Chiefs, that should concern me a little bit.
Yeah, Dale was talking about Ogbah, and he said next to Jones, he'll produce. I hope so, man.
But then again, he's been playing across from Myles Garrett. Now, the beginning of his career, I get what you're saying. It was kind of thin on that Cleveland defense. But last year, he played across from Myles Garrett, the number 1 pick in the draft, defensive end, who's also had, I think he had 9.5 sacks this year. So he's had some success. I don't think you can sit there and say Ogbah hasn't had his chance to succeed. So I'd be a little bit concerned with this. I'll agree with you. Somebody's got to make plays in that Kansas City defense. He's a guy that could step up into that role. But again, I can't call this a home run for the Chiefs, but it's a double, right? You're getting a 25-year-old. Yeah. You're getting a 25-year-old pass rusher that was high. That was a high choice. Whose ceiling was
a lot higher than what you have now.
The question is going to be, again, how far do the Chiefs lean on that other edge rusher? Because I'd like to see them go get a stud in the first or second round here, and then pair him next to Ogbah and let Ogbah be the number 2 again.
I would like that as well. Shree said, sorry, Drew, but I can blow the top off that secondary. I would love to see your 40 time, buddy. If you could ever send that to us, let us know. But, dude, I couldn't blow the top off of any secondary. And I consider myself kind of fat or kind of fast for a fat guy. So unless you're out there throwing 4.4 on a 40 time, it's a stretch, man. It's a stretch.
I'll agree. And again, the Chiefs secondary, not much to be talked about here last year. I don't really think Cleveland is making the right move here, but if it just ships the problem away before it becomes a problem, I guess at some point you got to sit there and say it's not the worst thing in the world.
Gregor, what's going on, man? He is from Gamecockland.
South Carolina. Good to see you out there, man. Glad to see more SEC representation in the comments, even though we do have some SEC fans. I think
we could use less.
Drew's a Big 12 guy, if you can't tell. Moving forward, though, I want to stick with Cleveland. We have another story coming out there saying Duke Johnson, their second/third running back at this point, is also demanding a trade, and that is the rumor.
Arguably the best receiving running back in the NFL.
I think Tariq Cohen might have something to say about that, but I agree with you. If you're talking about a pure receiver, Duke Johnson has skills.
Been doing it a lot longer than Tariq Cohen has.
He has. But now he wants out. Obviously, Kareem Hunt coming in is going to make a big impact for his snaps. You still have Nick Chubb as well, who's going to be eating up a lot of the power back carries. Do we have a problem in Cleveland before the season's even started? Is there too much drama going around this team?
No, I think you're looking at players that have been there for a little while that want to be part of this organization. And when you have someone like John Dorsey, and trust me, I know all about this, if you're not a John Dorsey guy, you're not going to find yourself on the field. You're not going to find yourself in these contracts. This is why Kansas City, as much as I like John Dorsey and how he can evaluate talent and how he can bring in some of the best players out of the draft, if you are not his guy, you're not going to find yourself in a favorable position in contracts and playing time. So what I see is guys going, I don't see myself as a future of the organization with the Cleveland Browns, so I'm going to find myself out of it. And I don't blame Duke Johnson. I don't blame Ogbah for wanting to move on from that organization because you guys are not John Dorsey guys.
And I understand that, but I do think that kind of precipitates a little bit of a problem here. What happens if we have more of these guys come out and say, we're losing, I'm not going to get paid, I want to go on in week 4, week 5, week 6. What if they don't have that miracle start to the season or the dream start to the season where you take off and you're 4-2 by week 6? What if you're 2-4? And then you got big personalities like Odell Beckham out there complaining every week. You got other guys complaining, Jarvis Landry complaining because they're not getting the ball enough. Could we see kind of attitude grenade this football team? Is that a possibility?
Oh, when you bring that much talent and that much kind of diva and drama into it, you absolutely better believe you're going to see that. Let's get to the comments real quick. Sharif says, Jake, you're making him more and more a Chiefs fan. We can always use more Chiefs fans.
I don't know how I hate the Chiefs. I try to call it like it is the Chiefs. It's once in a while fun to tease Drew about
says,
them,
go Browns, man. If you're a Browns fan, more props to you, man. It's been the hardest fan base to be part of, and there's no doubt about it.
Again, maybe Buffalo would contend with that, having been longer from the playoffs until, last year or 2 years ago with Tyrod Taylor. But I agree, they're definitely bottom 5 in success here recently. It's been tough sailing for the Cleveland Browns. Maybe that turns around this year.
You're a fan of the Cleveland Browns.
Well, I am from Cleveland. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns.
So you're a fan of the Cleveland Browns. Gary also says, John says, Cleveland, with all their number 1 picks at this point in time, I think what he's saying is they should be a dynasty by now.
Man, but they should have been like 5 years ago. When you
that's
talk about all that stuff. 15 years ago even. I'll agree with you. They should have had more success drafting, but it's one of those things you just keep throwing those darts until you start hitting on some of these guys. And Cleveland has done that. If you notice the last couple drafts, they focused on bringing on as many young players as they can. Now they've kind of gone from that kind of mentality. They've got a little bit of success with guys like Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb. They brought in some quality players, Baker Mayfield in the draft. Now they're going for, can we bring in veteran talent to supplement? And that's an exciting point in time to be at when your team starts doing that. That means your team is ready to start competing for playoffs. And when you compete for playoffs, the next step after that is Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying Browns the Super Bowl. I'm saying it's trending that way.
We're already picking spots for Duke Johnson, and I'm with Sharif. He would be a great pickup for any team. But a couple teams that have been mentioned. Deo says, what about Indy? And Shay says, what about Seattle? I mean, both of those teams would absolutely die to have a player like him there.
I don't think Indianapolis really needs him. I think Marlon Mack kind of fits that role really well right now. I wouldn't want to take touches out of Marlon Mack's hands because you're getting a younger guy in Mack. I think probably more dynamic even than Duke Johnson. Marlon Mack, when he's firing on all cylinders, that guy's very, very dangerous. I want to see another year out of him before we go get Duke Johnson.
And the only comment I'd say to that is he's not going to find targets because we all know what Andrew Luck likes to throw to, and that's T.Y. Hilton and his tight ends.
But he does a lot of the scat back work for Indianapolis, and when you bring in a guy like Duke Johnson, he's not running through the tackles. Right. So I think that needs to be Marlon Mack's spot. I wouldn't like to see him in Indianapolis. I don't think it's a good fit. What was the other team you mentioned? Because that was a better fit.
There's a couple. There's also the 49ers or the Jets or the Saints or Seattle. Let's go ahead and hit Seattle. What do you think about Seattle?
Seattle will be fantastic. They've been looking for any kind of help back there. I think Russell Wilson would love to have a safety valve like that. He'd be another one of those guys in the 3, 4, 5, 6-man rotation they seem to have. I think he'd fit in pretty well there as well. I think a good spot for him would be Houston. I think Deshaun Watson could, and I would hate to see this as a Titans fan, but Deshaun Watson could use as many safety valves and other options receiving the ball to get away from DeAndre Hopkins as possible. We've seen Kiki Qute kind of come on a little bit last year. Everybody knows that their other receiver, whose name I'm drawing a blank on, who's really quick but can't stay healthy.
Oh, Fuller.
Will Fuller has a problem staying on the field. We all know that. I would like to see him go to Houston. At least from an NFL perspective, I think that would be a good fit because Deshaun Watson can't keep taking those hits. The fastest way to get the ball out of his hands is have a guy like Duke Johnson who can squirt out to the flat, and you can sit there and just dump it to him and let him take the hit.
The other ones were 49ers, Jets, or the Saints. To be honest with you, I don't see the Saints. There's no way they're ever going to take...
if they went from a pure fast back perspective, you could spell Alvin Kamara with him. Because
there's no way.
Let's not forget, they do have Latavius Murray. I understand that. But he's not Mark Ingram.
The only one that would ever at this point in time rival Duke Johnson, the best receiving back, is Kamara. So why in the world would you put those two back there together? They can't
because
split
you'd have
time.
great, and you could run two backs at a time. You can run two backs at a time. I'm not saying you have to split time.
And another thing that I do want to mention, and I know I'm going to sound like a homer, as Kansas City. Kansas City could use a great receiving back because when
could he be Jamal Charles there? I'm not saying he's as talented as Charles is, but
exactly when we lost Charles, when we lost Kareem Hunt. I mean, Damian Williams is going to try to do the best he can, but he's not that.
That's a lot of receptions coming out of the backfield.
And there's absolutely no way that Carlos Hyde can do that with all the tread that's been worn off his tires. So bringing in someone like Duke Johnson to Kansas City would be huge for Patrick Mahomes.
Let me hit a couple of these other teams. The 49ers I heard mentioned. I don't think he really fits well with Jerick McKinnon there. Obviously, Jerick McKinnon spent the whole year with a torn ACL this year. But with him coming back, if he comes back healthy, I think they play a very similar role. I think Jerick McKinnon needs those touches rather than having Duke Johnson split that time with him.
Especially the money they're paying him.
Another team that could probably use him is Baltimore. I know Baltimore has a plethora of running backs. They have as many running backs as you could ever want. But I don't think they have a guy that's a pure, just out-and-out pass catcher. Maybe you could say Buck Allen, but I think Buck Allen's a little bit more of a traditional running back than Duke Johnson is. So I think he'd fit in pretty well. And to have a guy like Lamar Jackson that's as dynamic as he is, to be able to make short passes to a running back, I think would help that team out a lot. Trying to think where else he would really fit in that would be good. I heard, again, the Saints, I'm not as sold on that fit, but again, they need weapons. They need guys who can catch the ball. I think that would be a good thing. If you can't go get a receiver, next best thing is get a running back who can catch. Put him and Kamara side by side with Drew Brees in the shotgun, and all of a sudden, you've got some dangerous receivers coming out of the backfield.
Shay, it's hard to believe everything you say because I've heard you say a lot of weird things. But he also said, breaking news, Seattle's running back Chris Carson was traded to the 49ers. If that's true, I think it's
It's April 1st. We can't believe you, at least not till we see it after the show, unfortunately.
It's also coming out of shit.
You know what the funny part is? You know what the funny part is? I was posting stuff on the page earlier today, and everyone's like, this is fake. April Fools. Then I was like, no, guys, I'm really just trying to tell you what's going on.
I guess I'm not a homer. Sharif and Gary both agree that Duke Johnson would be a great fit. Well, they say good fit, but a good fit in Kansas City. I think he honestly would. I'd love to see him there.
I'd like to see any running back signing in Kansas City. Realistically, I mean, I like Carlos Hyde, but I don't know if Carlos Hyde at 28 is the same guy Carlos Hyde was coming out of the draft, or with the same upside and everything. They need help there. He's not going to do it alone.
To be honest with you, and I know we're not getting into this right now, but that's one of my biggest sleeping points for Kansas City in a draft is to pick up a good running back. And one person that I really hope they look at is Bryce Love out of Stanford, a guy that's falling down the draft board because of his injury. If that guy can stay healthy, talk about a huge guy that can make a huge difference.
The one kind of issue I have with that is it kind of reminds me a little bit of Monty Ball, Wisconsin running back from a while back, where he just touched the ball so much in college. You might get a guy that's just beat up and not quite going to perform in the pros.
Damian Williams and Carlos Hyde, he didn't have to carry the rock all the time.
And I understand that, but I think, again, you take that many hits in college, and not that Bryce Love has taken as many hits as Monty Ball did. Nobody, I think, has taken as many hits as Monty Ball has. But when I see Bryce Love, I just wonder if he's taken a lot of hits and if
Maybe
that's going to impede him a little bit. So that was a little uncalled for. A little below the belt, but let the man rest, Drew. Ray Rice is out of the spotlight. But going back to the Bryce Love thing, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm just throwing out a negative here that's kind of counterbalance your point here.
Yeah.
That's one thing that worries me about Bryce Love.
That's probably why he's falling down the draft board.
It could be. It could be. Everyone's falling in love with Josh Jacobs. If he goes in the first round, maybe Bryce Love will be a steal if he goes anywhere later than that.
I just don't believe in Alabama running backs. The only one I could really, truly, fully believe in is
Mark Ingram has been the best one.
No, Alexander.
Oh, well, okay, all right. Recently, Mark Ingram has been the best one.
He just got released by his team that drafted him, who doesn't really
not re-signed, not released. Different.
Okay, they let him go. They let him walk.
And who snapped him up right away? The team that loves running the ball more than anybody? The Ravens. They
desperate.
saw plenty. Okay.
Sorry,
yeah,
Sharif.
Have you seen all those running
Sorry,
backs?
Sharif.
They're not desperate.
They're desperate. Figure out this offense as quick as we can.
They have like 38 running backs. Nobody needs running backs. If there's a team that's good on running back, it's probably the Ravens.
Sharif, you should love this comment from him.
Exactly. So that just goes to show you they believe in Mark Ingram too. That they're like, we have 38 running backs, but you know what? A 39th wouldn't hurt.
Can he play linebacker?
Yeah. Well, with Mosley gone, they might need him to. Moving forward, I want to go to some of these other comments. Gregory says he trusts Dorsey and that they finally have a football guy running the organization. Look, I know we've been a little bit down on him here, but I don't think anyone can sit there and say John Dorsey has not done a great job with Cleveland, because that's been the biggest rebuild in the NFL for 15 years.
No, completely agree with you, Gregory. I kid you not. I was so distraught when they let John Dorsey go, because I'm thinking this guy has given us some of the best drafts I can think of in Kansas City history. But the problem with him, and I'll tell you right now, if he does not fit in, as the players don't fit in with what he wants, you'll see some of your best players go away. You'll see them not being signed and fall short of that stuff. And that's the reason why we let him go. Dude, he can claim he can see talent from a mile away and pick the best players. But he has an issue with keeping them there.
And it's going to sound crazy. You know who else that sounds like? Jeff Fisher. He was notorious for that when he was with the Titans. It's just, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're in the NFL for a couple of years and I don't like you, you get benched. So, look, I think those kind of guys that kind of lean on who I like versus who actually performs, I think in the long run, it can wind up hurting your team. It can hold you back from winning Super Bowls. So that's why I think the Chiefs were almost better having let him walk. But I'll agree with you. When it comes to rebuilding a team, having a guy like that can absolutely help you. I just don't know if he's that guy that leads you to multiple Super Bowls because with just a team of guys he likes or guys that fall under his, my guy category.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Nate says Cleveland is looking scary. Man, you are with the majority of people that are NFL fans. They are all saying that at this point in time.
And again, I counterpunch a lot here. Let me just say, pump the brakes a little bit because we've had teams that everyone's been crowning champions in the offseason. Remember the Eagles not long ago? Jacksonville was one of those teams a couple of years ago where they signed every free agent and then won like 4 games that year. I mean, it's one of those things. Winning the offseason is not the same as winning the regular season.
And I'm going to be a glass half full kind of guy and say they didn't have Baker Mayfield. Believe in Baker Mayfield. This guy throws to the open target. He doesn't favor targets like Andy Dalton. He literally throws the favorite guy or the open guy every time.
Let's give the Red Rifle a little bit of credit here, though. If you had A.J. Green and then the rest of his receivers, you'd favor him too.
When he's not open, you don't.
Oh, yeah, you do. Because you look at Tyler Boyd, who up until this year is just fine with being covered. Yeah, you favor A.J. Green. And you just sit there and say, I know he might catch it. I know Tyler Boyd probably isn't. So, look, don't pick on the Red Rifle like that. Let's talk about Sharif here really quick, saying Kiki Corte and Fuller can't stay healthy. You're absolutely right about that, but one difference is Fuller's proven multiple seasons he's had an issue with it. Kiki Corte has had 1 season where he's been injured.
Say that 4
That
times
happens.
fast.
I can't.
Okay.
That happens in the NFL. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get guys hurt. So I wouldn't sit there and say he can't be your third yet. I would be very concerned about Fuller because Fuller is hurt every year. And it seems like it's a major injury almost every year.
But his talent is so good.
I'm not saying get rid of him. I'm not saying get rid of him.
I know.
But I'm saying have that plan B.
When he's
have
healthy,
that plan C. Have that plan D. Because he's probably not going to be there the entire
healthy,
16 games.
Man, he's scary. He's scary, Ness Hopkins. No doubt about it. Sheree says, yeah, the Browns are scary like they were the past season.
Well, I'm not going to lie. They gave a bunch of teams a lot of scares this year. 7 wins. Now you're talking about adding Odell Beckham to the mix.
They almost made the playoffs.
They did. I mean, we were talking about the Browns in the playoffs in Week 16. Which, when was the last time that happened? 2004?
I think
2003?
they were the team to...
Derek Anderson was under center.
They were the team to do the most overtimes. Last year, this team was in every game. There's just only, a few games that they were just blown out. I'm telling you, Baker Mayfield is the real deal, guys. If you're a Browns fan like Gregory is, dude, be excited for the future.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying a Super Bowl. I won't say that because I've been saying that about Kansas City and I've been wrong for my whole life. But I'm just saying.
And that's okay. You don't need to go from 7 wins to Super Bowl. If you go from 7 to 10 wins or 7 to 9 wins, you call that advancement. And then you sit there and say, okay, we need one more offseason like this, and then we're going to be talking about making a deep run in the playoffs. So again, trending upward, but don't be disappointed if they make the playoffs or if they challenge for the playoffs again, win 9 or 10 games, and then get beat out by the Ravens and a couple good AFC teams and don't make it. The key is you want to see forward progress. You want to see more regular season wins, and I think they're doing the right things to make that happen.
What's going on, Steve? Glad you could join us. Ken, always good to see you, man.
Also, Shay says, breaking news, Jason Witten is one hot pocket away from the bench. I don't know, man. I guess we'll see. We'll see how bad that year in the booth has really affected his physicality. It might help him. At 35, when you've played as long as Jason Witten has, or 36, wherever he's at, honestly, that year off might help him more than anything else. We all know he's not outrunning anybody anymore. He's going to use that large body to sit there and put distance between him and whoever's trying to cover him. I don't think maybe a little bit of bulk on Jason Witten might not be the worst thing in the world.
He probably leaned up sitting up there at the little booth. Charlie, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us. Ken says, what's up with all this Browns trash talk, guys? Watch out. I'm telling you, AFC championships. Man, I don't know, man.
Howdy, Steve and Ken. If Drew did not mention you, I'm not sure. I wasn't listening to him. I do it a lot. I zone him out.
Yeah, you were.
Shay says the Browns are going 14-12. Let me tell you, that might be a bit optimistic. I like the Browns, but you got to have better than a 24th defense if you're going to win 14 games. Just ask the Chiefs. Because they had the best offense in the world, and they didn't win 14 games with that defense.
That was a tear I wiped away.
I understand. Charlie agrees. He says the Browns are going to have success, and John is saying the Browns could take the division this season. Do you call them the favorite? And I don't want to get too derailed here because we didn't mean to talk football this long, but surprise, we're still talking football. Do you think the Browns are the favorite to win that division?
What's up, Sonny? What's up, Chris? The division, yes. I fully believe that. I mean, it's seizable. It is seizable for them to win it. I mean, because they always play that division tough. I mean, if I was gonna sit there and say what it was compared to last year, you got to give it to the Ravens as the division leader.
And I agree. I think I'm going to give a slight edge to the Ravens because they've done it before. They have the coaching in place. They're not going to make those mistakes. That's the thing everybody's not talking about. This is Tony Kitchen's first time as a head coach. Realistically, it's his first time as
Tony.
Realistically, it's his first time as a coordinator.
Isn't it, Freddie?
It is Freddie Kitchens, whoever he is. Whatever Kitchens, all right?
Kitchens. Get your ass in the kitchens. Oh, that's the first time I cussed on this show.
Anyway, going back to this, it is his first time. He's going to make mistakes here, Drew. You're going up against John Harbaugh. There aren't many coaches who have been employed for the same team as long as John Harbaugh has been with the Ravens. So he's going up against an experienced guy that knows how to get things done. He's not going to make those crucial mistakes with his timeouts, with game management, with challenge flags that Kitchens probably will here.
Man, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's going to be rough. Hold on, I got to catch up with some of this. Chris says he's been taking the Browns to the Super Bowl for years.
Well, this time you might be right.
But then he says, yes, the AFC North champions, unless RG3 starts. Do you really see RG3 making that much of a difference in Baltimore?
Look, let me just be on the record here. I don't like Lamar Jackson, okay? I don't think he's a very good NFL quarterback. I know, but if you're new, I don't like Lamar Jackson.
Okay, breaking news.
But you need to play Lamar Jackson before you play RG3, okay? I think the ship has sailed on RG3. I don't think RG3 is going to be that difference maker that keeps the Browns out of the playoffs or winning the division. If anything, it's the Baltimore Ravens figuring out that defense with guys like C.J. Mosley and Zadarius Smith all leaving. That, to me, is going to be the biggest question. And Joe Flacco. Let's not pretend like he wasn't a big part of that Ravens success this season, too. At least for the early part.
Yep, absolutely. He's playing some of the best ball he's ever played. Let me get back to some of these comments. Sheree says, and again, money on Uncle Drew can beat... Okay, that... Witten on a foot race. I don't know if I could do that, man. To be honest with you, I don't know if I could do that. But this is the one I wanted to get to. He says, I hate to say it, but the Steelers are going to win the AFC North. With 11 wins, the Baltimore will get 10, and Browns will get 8, man. He is sleeping on the Browns,
I think they need weapons. I know we saw James Conner take a step forward, and with Big Ben, they're always a threat, but Big Ben's health is in question. The defense still has question marks for the Steelers. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the focal point here. The question is going to be, can he be the same guy when he's the number one receiving threat? They really don't have that stud tight end either. I know Vance McDonald had some success. Yeah. I'm just saying the weapons are starting to run away from Pittsburgh. And we've seen this before with guys like Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders leaving as well. The question is going to be, how long can you keep replacing guys like this? And if they can't, I don't like the Steelers to win this division. I don't like the Steelers to beat the Browns for second place, which is, again, spoiler alert for later in the offseason, probably where I have the Steelers finishing is third.
To me, it's not even the Steelers' offense. It's the Steelers' defense. They need so much on that defensive side. Yeah, they got starters, but they don't got playmakers.
They need linebackers. They need secondary help. They signed Steven Nelson and said problem solved.
No, you got average starters in the NFL expecting to make them elite. You got to have some of those elite players. I mean, the system is not in place in the Steelers organization to just kind of run with mediocre names and expect that defense to be great. It's not the Ravens organization, John Harbaugh and his defense, where we always constantly question, do they have enough there? And it seems to be that way. That's not the Steelers.
And tip of the hat to you, Sharif. He agrees with me saying Lamar Jackson is not the long-term solution, but he is saying that it's the guy you need to play right now. Now that Flacco's gone, all doubt is out the window. You're tied to him now. You might as well put him on the field. You can't sit there and tell me RG3 needs to play. I just don't see it.
Eddie says he's a Chiefs fan, so he has no horse in this, but he said the AFC North race he believes will be the Steelers to win it. They still had the best quarterback in the division, and that goes a long way.
And I'll buy that. I still think he's got, with the experience, I'm still going Big Ben over Baker Mayfield.
Nope, I completely disagree. Baker Mayfield is the better talent at this point in time, which only thing that matters is 2019 season in the NFL. The most talent goes to Baker Mayfield.
I disagree. I like Baker Mayfield, but I think we might be reaching here. Big Ben, obviously, still a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, still a guy who's been around plenty of time for the NFL, so he's experienced. He's not going to make some of those mistakes that Baker Mayfield may make. If we see a big leap forward, sure, maybe the Browns can eventually, going into next year, we can talk about them having the best quarterback in the division. But right now, you still got to tip the hat to Big Ben because, again, he's had all this success. This stuff doesn't magically happen. Look at Mike Wallace. When he left, he was terrible. Emmanuel Sanders, still a good receiver, but not what he was when he was in Pittsburgh.
So
maybe with Manning.
I'm gonna punch holes in your.
He makes receivers look really well.
Okay.
And again, they've always had great receivers in Pittsburgh while he's been there.
That's what I was gonna say.
But the reason they're great is because he's throwing them the ball.
Have.
What did Santonio Holmes do with the Jets?
They have
not a lot.
The best wide receiver, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL last year, and the years in past for Ben Roethlisberger. And then
just like we say with Tom Brady, has he ever done it anywhere else? And I love Antonio Brown. I think he's one of the best playmakers out there. But he has a prove-it year here. We haven't talked about that. He needs to prove it in Oakland to show that all that stuff with Big Ben was not a fluke. Because we've seen guys.
I agree.
We've seen guys like Wallace. We've seen guys like Santonio Holmes who have not had that same success once they've left.
But they haven't had the career that Antonio Brown has ever had.
And that is true. That is true. We're still talking about different caliber receivers.
So you're talking about top 3 receiver in the NFL, and then you go
versus
probably
top 5?
Hold on,
top 10 in Wallace when he left.
That's what everybody thought. Okay, I was confused. Okay.
No, that's what everybody thought when he left.
And then you go top 20 with Juju Smith or Juju.
Look at the way the
you're
Dolphins,
talking about two of the top 20 best receivers in the Steelers organization. Where do you put the Browns receivers? And Sharif, he goes, "Wow, I can't believe you're a Baker fan." Trust me, I'm not, but I do believe in this guy's talent. He finds the open receiver.
It always comes back to the Big 12, doesn't it, Drew?
Absolutely. And he seems to be able to do it. And to be honest with you, you can ask Jake from the very beginning during the whole draft coming up. I was a huge believer in him, and I thought him.
And credit to you, you've been all in on him all the time. Again, I was a Sam Darnold guy, and I said he sort of am.
And I said he was the best quarterback coming into this draft. I didn't see him coming as number 1, and no one did.
And let me just tell you, I still think the jury might be out on that because, again, Sam Darnold, when you look at what he had, when he's throwing to guys like Robbie Anderson, and he's throwing to guys like I'm drawing a blank on his name, Quincy Enunwa. Thank you. It's just not the same. And Enunwa was injured as well. Yeah. He did not have anywhere near the receiving talent or the running back talent that Baker Mayfield did have. So I'm not going to give up on Sam Darnold just yet. But again, when you look at what Baker Mayfield's done, you have to give him the advantage. You have to sit there and say he might be that next big star to come out behind Patrick Mahomes when we talk about a generational shift. We're going to be moving away from guys like Drew Brees and Tom Brady and Eli Manning and all these other guys. They're going to be moving on soon. When you look at guys that are going to pick up the mantle and be the stars and the face of the NFL, right now a safe bet is Baker Mayfield's going to be in the mix.
Yeah.
So I'll agree with you there. But I still can't sit there and say he's better than Big Ben Roethlisberger, who has multiple Super Bowl rings and has winning seasons, which, let's face it, Baker Mayfield doesn't have yet.
And possibly rate more win.
Well, that doesn't count on the field. But when you look at everything, I think it's still hands down. You got to sit there and say Roethlisberger has the advantage until Mayfield can take it away from him.
I think it's going to show a huge difference of the talent that
anyone taking Andy Dalton in this pick for the AFC North best quarterback.
I think you're going to see a huge step back. He lost his best receiver. Yes, Juju Smith is absolutely talented, deserves every praise he gets. and Baker Mayfield gained one of the best receivers. So let's see what happens this year. But I'm telling you right now, my money's on Baker Mayfield.
Okay. All right. Well, you've been all in on him from the start, so I'm glad to see the chips are still all in the center of the table for you on Baker Mayfield. I'm sitting there saying, let's hold off and see.
I want to pump the brakes real quick. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if you guys seen this or not, but I'm telling you right now, he's the best.
We'll see. But moving forward here, Steve says he doesn't like Lamar Jackson at all. I understand. He kind of probably reminds you, Steve, as a Buffalo fan, of Tyrod Taylor. I think it's a pretty good comparison. He's maybe a little more athletic, which is ridiculous to say when you talk about athleticism and Tyrod Taylor. He's probably more athletic, though, but probably not quite as good of a passer. Probably doesn't take care of the ball quite as well as Tyrod did. The question is going to be, can he move his game going forward? I think we all know what Tyrod Taylor is at this point. The question is going to be, can Lamar Jackson develop? I don't know that he can. If he can, I think I think the Ravens stand to benefit from that. Also, Shay says, do the Titans draft a quarterback? They should, but they won't because we're one of the more conservative franchises, and I don't think our ownership would go for it because they love Marcus Mariota because he's a nice guy. But the problem is nice guys don't win you football games. Moving forward, we don't have to dwell on that. Ken says Baker was kind of a dick in his press conference, but let's face it, we all kind of want to see that in our quarterback, right? You want to see a little bit of a moxie. You want to see a little bit of that like asshole attitude. I mean, and you said it, so I'm going to say it too. I'm going to swear on today's show, but you kind of want to see a little bit of that moxie or whatever you want to call it out of your quarterback. You want to see a little bit of that me versus the world kind of mentality.
Yeah, it's kind of that leadership quality in most of our bosses, who are leaders in our daily lives, are assholes.
If you want to win, you got to have at least a little bit of an asshole streak in you. I really do believe that.
Shay says, no, Drew Brees is the best, is what he's saying. Duh. And he says, I'm drunk. Possibly on the second part, but Brees, as a Hall of Famer as he is, can you arguably say he's the best quarterback right now in the NFL?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. It was a great season. That's all I can say. Remember, we were talking about Drew Brees and Patrick Mahomes for MVP. Nobody was sitting there saying Tom Brady's going to be the MVP this year. And I like Tom Brady, obviously. I think he's a great quarterback. I
absolutely love Drew Brees. I've loved him for a long time.
I know.
I think this guy's extremely
Drew's never
talented.
liked Drew Brees.
And I think it's great because I love seeing short quarterbacks succeed in the NFL because I'm short. So I'm not saying that.
I think he could be. I think he could be.
But has he ever really been there? Because I always think it's been Aaron Rodgers. When you talk about talent, you're talking about arm level or arm skill level, and you're talking about accuracy, you always bring up Aaron Rodgers.
I think when you go accuracy, I'm going to sit there and say Drew Brees. Now, if you want to talk about the deep ball, if you want to talk about everything else, yes, I'd say Aaron Rodgers. But we've kind of seen Aaron Rodgers take a step back here these years recently, and he's been injured, which at 39, we have not really seen injury problems out of Drew Brees. So this is your big point here. Drew Brees shows up every day.
He does.
Drew Brees shows up every week. You know he's going to be active. You know he's going to be making an impact. Absolutely, I agree. And I'm not going to say he's the best, but I think he needs to be in the conversation.
And as long as he's not beating the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, he deserves another ring.
All right. Now, we got a bunch of these comments. Drew, do you want to keep going comments? Do you want to keep talking football, or do you want to move on? I'm leaving it entirely up to you, so you're the bad guy.
Well, dude, we got the final four to talk about. It's really hard not to sit there and talk about this. I mean, as there's so much to talk about. I mean, it's up to you guys. Do you want to keep talking football, or do we want to do some college basketball for a little bit? Maybe jump back into football when we get done.
I agree. In the meantime, while they're deciding, I think I will just announce that if you haven't heard, John Calipari, UK's coach, that is University of Kentucky for basketball, has signed a new lifetime length deal with Kentucky. Good move, Drew? Yes, let me answer that for you here. Yes, it is by Kentucky because they snatched him out of the jaws of UCLA, who offered him a 6-year, $48 million deal, and I don't realistically believe this deal was close to being done. I think this was just Calipari trying to drive that price up on UK. But for them to lock down a guy like this who recruits like this or lets Nike pay his players like this and gets the best talent every year in college basketball, it doesn't matter how he gets them, right?
No, he does.
To keep a guy like this hanging around your program,
yeah,
is only good things for the University of Kentucky. You can't sit there and tell me it's a bad thing.
Lifetime.
I don't care. I mean, it's a coach. It's not pretend like you're short of him having dementia. I mean, he's not really going to see that big of a step back in his overall performance, right?
I
Probably. I mean, especially when you're talking basketball, where you just get the good guys, you put them on the court. You definitely in college, you give them the right direction and everything like that, but everything else you pretty much let them handle. Look, I mean, that's what it comes down to, is can you recruit in the NCAA? He can recruit. I mean, you look at all these Kentucky guys going at the top of the board in the NBA draft. I think they did a good job here. They probably paid him about $10 mil, $11, $12 million a year for the rest of his life, or as long as he wants to keep doing it. But I mean, it's a good move by Kentucky, right?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I'm completely agreeing with you. I just want to catch up on some of these comments.
Chris wants to talk hockey. We will talk about them and their playoffs coming up here. They're not there yet, but we will get to the hockey at least a little bit. But as long as we have football on the table, hockey may take a bit of a backseat, Chris. I don't know how to break it to you, but everybody likes talking football.
And Charlie wants to talk about baseball, man. As much as I enjoy baseball, as much as I enjoy the game, it's just too early. I mean, there's so much to talk about. As much as we would love to sit here for 8 hours and talk sports with you guys, we got to keep our half hour to an hour and a half kind of, all put together. But when
we got to stay in the window.
When baseball gets a little bit deeper, trust me, we'll get into it.
Absolutely. So far as I can see, we want to keep talking football. So let's talk Russell Wilson. We've talked a lot of Browns here. Everybody, again, thought this was a joke when I put it out there, but those rumors with the Giants and him moving on from Seattle and going to New York just do not seem to go away here, Drew. Are you buying any of this? Because this story's stuck around. I know early on everyone's like, it's not real. He's a Seattle guy. He likes it out here. But, again, when things like this don't go away, it tells me there's probably at least a little bit of doubt in his mind, or there's a little bit of want in his mind to move on to New York.
He might want to move on. And you guys, if you watch this show at all, know exactly what I'm talking about. This guy's arm talent, if he was anywhere else besides Seattle, out of Pete Carroll's system, he would be considered probably the top 3, if not the top 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL, because this guy's arm talent is beyond a lot of these players. The problem is they run first. And that's always going to be that way with Pete Carroll. He's always going to believe in that system. So maybe...
Well, I think that's okay. Maybe when you have a great quarterback, that can still be okay as long as you throw it enough.
Maybe he is trying to move on to be that. Because right now, no one's talking about Russell Wilson being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, I believe in him, and I've seen his arm. When you make Tyler Lockett, and I like Tyler Lockett, one of the best red zone targets in the NFL, you have good arm
This is kind of your Roethlisberger point. I'm going to switch sides of the aisle and talk about this. Okay, Tyler Lockett is not anything near what Ben Roethlisberger has, and he's making this guy look like a superstar, okay? I don't think Tyler Lockett's a special receiver by any means. I think he's okay. I think he's fine. He's an NFL receiver. But Tyler Lockett is not like the guy that makes Russell Wilson look great, okay? Neither is Doug Baldwin. He doesn't have that guy that just absolutely blows up. He doesn't have Antonio Brown. He doesn't have guys even like Mike Wallace or Emmanuel Sanders we've been able to point to. Or Juju Smith-Schuster. So he doesn't have that receiver that we've been like, oh, this guy needs to be... in Seattle, or Russell Wilson wouldn't be that good. He's been getting it done with guys that are slightly above average to slightly below average, and still has this team competitive almost every year. So I think the Seattle will be crazy to let this guy go. I'm talking, need to franchise this guy, and everyone's like, his contract's up. No, it isn't, because there's a franchise tag. Exactly. Yeah. His contract is nowhere near over, because he's going to be able to sit there, or the GM is going to be able to sit there and slap him with that franchise tag, keep him around for about as much money as Russell Wilson needs to be making every year anyway. And he's got no choice. He's got to play, or he's got to try to sit out like Le'Veon Bell did, or force a trade.
Sharif, you're right. Lockett is about 5'9". And John says, Wilson is looking for a change. Man, I'm right there with you. I think that's the issue. But if Seattle lets him go, they're crazy. Ken says, Haskins or Murray first overall. If you're the GM for the next 15 years of your favorite team, who would you pick?
I think it just depends on what you want to do. I think if you want a guy who can run around, who can make things happen with his feet, who can kind of extend plays, maybe upside Patrick Mahomes / Russell Wilson, you're going to take Kyler Murray. If you want to sit there and protect a guy, you want to play conservative football, you want to run the ball a lot, and then turn him loose, if you want a Big Ben or a Kirk Cousins that could stand still, you go get Dwayne Haskins. But you need to sell out to fitting the best scenario around this guy. If you got Kyler Murray, you put as many weapons around him as you can. If you've got Dwayne Haskins, you build the offensive line. You build the running game. And that's what you do. I don't have a problem with either of these guys. I think if I'm going to pick one, and you put a gun to my head and said pick one right now, I'd take Kyler Murray, because I think he has a little bit more of a ceiling where you can get elite play out of him. He could be Russell Wilson. I don't necessarily see that with Dwayne Haskins. But it really just depends on what your team wants to do. If this is the Giants, they're not going to take Kyler Murray, and they shouldn't, because that's not the kind of game they want to play. Same thing with the Panthers. Or the Titans, somebody who wants to run the ball first and wants to block really well and keep your quarterback still and let him make plays. You don't need this guy. You need that guy that's going to stand still and throw the ball accurately like Dwayne Haskins can do. Or vice versa. So go ahead. Who would you take?
No, you almost said it exactly what I wanted to say. It depends on the offense. What kind of offense are you trying to run? If you're taking Haskins, you're talking about kind of what the Patriots do. It's a short to mediocre passes. It's real small. It's keep it in the pocket. He doesn't have a lot of movement in his legs. He's kind of a standstill target. But that being said, he has a huge base. That guy can make any play or any throw that you need a quarterback to make. But as soon as that pocket disperses, you're going to have a little bit of issue. He's going to get sacked. You're going to kind of see like the Eli Manning scenario where he's falling on the ground, trying to keep himself healthy, and that's not really what you want to see when you're trying to do something like Kyler Murray, where you're doing play action, a lot of maybe some wildcat every now and then, or something a little bit crazier, maybe something that kind of like what you see Kansas City's doing. You want Kyler Murray. That's who you're going to go for. You're going to pick someone like that who also can make all the NFL throws, but you're going to do a little bit with his size. He's not that big, but you know what? I like to throw that completely out of the window because you look at someone like Russell Wilson, you look at someone like Drew Brees. These guys have literally thrown smaller quarterbacks out the window. They work in the NFL. But to be honest with you, if I was going to pick one right now, it would also be Kyler Murray because I like what he has on the upside. Haskins, as good as he is, I kind of think you saw the best of him with his 50 touchdowns in Ohio State, breaking tons of records. I mean, this guy is definitely talented. I think you saw the ceiling. Kyler Murray, with just 1 year out of college being played, I don't think you've seen the ceiling just yet.
Absolutely. Now, Bo also says that Russell Wilson is the best deep ball thrower in the NFL, and if you had to franchise him again, you'd pay that $36 million to him every day of the week, right? You find the money for the quarterback. It doesn't matter how much it takes. You find that money. Yeah. So, yeah, realistically, they have 2 years at least of franchise tags, possibly 3, where they could go beyond next year, which is the last year of his contract. You could keep this guy under contract to like 2022. So they have no reason to panic on that at all. The only kind of scenario I could see is you play through this next year, you franchise him, and he pulls a Le'Veon Bell and says, I won't even show up. I'm not showing up to anything. At that point, you trade him for 2 to 3 to 4 first-round picks, and you live with it. I mean, if you can take the Giants for all that, then you sit there and rebuild your franchise with that. And you sit there and say, well, we tried at least. If he's absolutely just not going to play for you ever again, and Russell Wilson's not that guy, but if he is, if it comes to that, you take those 2 to 4 first-round picks, and you sit there and call it and sit there and say, okay, well, now we need to rebuild.
Yeah. Eddie says he wouldn't take either. Ohio State quarterbacks never translate to the NFL. I'm not sold on Murray either. All of his hype is based off of one season in college, which is...
And that is true, but let me pump the brakes on it real quick.
Let me finish the comment. I can name several quarterbacks who had one good year and not drafted, or who got drafted high and totally busted the NFL.
And you are right about that, but here's the thing. I don't think you can judge a guy by the program he comes from necessarily. I think it is a negative. It's a minus in his column. When you talk about Dwayne Haskins, he's not the same as the rest of these guys because he's a different player. You can sit there and say he's had success because of it, but he's also set better records passing than any of those guys have as well. Because going by your logic, if you sit there and say, oh, well, nobody at Ohio State's had any success, look at Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield looked pretty good in the pros, right? Does that mean Kyler Murray is automatically going to be pretty good in the pros because Baker Mayfield was an Oklahoma quarterback who had success? No. So I understand where you're coming from here. Ohio State has had a lot of busts at quarterback and guys that did not pan out at the NFL level at quarterback, but you can't sit there and say just because that's happened, I need to sit there and throw out everything on Dwayne Haskins. I can't trust him. You need to sit there and look at the tape, look at the way he throws the ball, and I think we all notice he's pretty accurate. I'm a little worried about the way he moves in the pocket, but he still senses pressure okay. The question is going to be, is he going to be worth the first-round pick? And I think that's where your question mark is, because I think Dwayne Haskins in a normal year is probably a bottom first round, a top second-round pick that can eventually develop into a good pocket passer. He's not Phillip Rivers is the problem, and he's going to be drafted at that spot. And I think when you look at his skill set, that's what you want to see. You want to see Phillip Rivers level accuracy and passing.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to knock Haskins by any means. I'm really honestly not. I like him as far as what he did in Ohio State. He's one of those quarterbacks that seems like he should be one of those high draft picks, but I think he's going to fall when teams start drafting. They're going to look at him and go, he's just not worth this high enough pick. And I actually see him kind of maybe falling to the third quarterback being picked, because when teams start interviewing and start looking at the tape and start looking at all the stuff that they do, they fall in love with these quarterbacks that are not considered above them. Look at Baker Mayfield going as number one. No one really saw that happening. I didn't see it happen, and I thought he was the best quarterback. It happens, and that's just what I see Haskins becoming. I think Murray's hype is just too much. I think he's going to be the first. I could be wrong, but then after that, we'll see how.
Yeah, I think he's going number one.
After that, we'll see how the dominoes fall.
I agree, and I think Murray's going to be number one. I think the Cardinals have kind of tipped their hand a little bit to everybody in the NFL, saying they're just going to go draft the quarterback, and especially with them kind of alienating Josh Rosen, they've kind of put the screws to him already a little bit, saying, he's our guy for now and all that kind of crap.
Yeah.
I really don't think they're going to stick with him. I think they're going to go draft Kyler Murray first overall, but I don't think, again, you can sit there and criticize Haskins for that because he's not going to run the system they want to play with. The way they block in Arizona, you couldn't put a guy like Haskins back there or it looked like Kirk Cousins with the Vikings this year. So I think a lot of it is scheme fit. So for him, it's almost better to fall off of that first pick. It's better for him to fall a little bit deeper, get on a team that has a bit better of an offensive line, like the Giants are trying to set up. Again, I think that is already, these teams are starting to show their hands a little bit. I think the Giants are going Dwayne Haskins because they know they need to protect him. That's why you trade the only good pass rusher you have into Olivier Vernon, or that you have left, and you go trade him for an offensive guard because you know you need to protect him.
One of the best guards in the league. Yeah,
exactly.
agreed.
Even though he's a veteran. Because you know Eli Manning is not going to be the starter there forever. I think they're going Dwayne Haskins because they know they need to protect him.
Sheree says Mahomes has the best arm in the NFL by far, and he also says Holmes is Elway 2.0.
I mean, I really hope...
The only way I'll agree with that is if he brings the Super Bowl rings to Kansas City. Beyond that, I hate the Elway comparison.
I mean, I really hope not, because the next 15 years of my life sitting next to this guy are going to be really, really difficult to listen to. But I think you're right. I think he's one of the better talents in the NFL. But again, how much of it is attributed to scheme? We've seen guys like Watson for the Houston Texans have good early years, or have good year or two, and then the scheme changes, or something else changes where they lose some talent, or you get that sophomore slump and you're not the same. I still want to see the follow-up year, but I think when you look at his rookie year, or whatever, his first year playing, you got to sit there and say, Mahomes, like, the sky is the limit for Mahomes.
I got a couple more comments I want to say, and Bo says, best arm, maybe not, maybe the best deep ball thrower. Man, I would give you that, except have you seen him throw left-handed?
Well, and he might be right. Maybe we take that away from Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a very good one. I think he's top 3, top 2. Does it really matter at the end of the day? I mean, we all know he throws the ball really, really well. And we're talking Russell Wilson here. Deep. I just want to make sure you know we're not talking about your buddy Mahomes.
No, we're always talking about Mahomes.
But again, you know he can throw the deep ball. You know he can make things happen. He stretches the field. And he does it without guys like Devontae Adams. He does it without guys without guys like Tyreek Hill. He does it with these guys that nobody sits there and calls elite unless you're some of these, fantasy players and they look at the way Doug Baldwin has kind of performed. Look, take Doug Baldwin, go put him on Cincinnati with Aaron Rodgers, with Andy Dalton. We're not talking about Doug Baldwin being a great receiver. Take, again, Antonio Brown, move him to the Raiders. Now we're still talking about him being an elite receiver. So it's not necessarily about where they play. I really just don't think Russell Wilson's had the type of receiver support that some of these other great quarterbacks have had to this point. Yeah. He's done the best with less. And I think that's something exciting to look forward to with the Seahawks is maybe if he goes to the Giants, not if you're a Seahawks fan, but if he does go to the Giants, maybe he can actually make things happen with some higher caliber receivers.
John says, I think he's talking about Haskins is not going the first round. He's good, but he has concrete for cleats.
Well, he doesn't run, but that's not a bad thing. Look at Tom Brady.
It's not even that, man. I mean, if you watch his tape in the pocket, his footwork is absolutely terrible. The only thing he got going for him, which works.
Are we talking Haskins here?
Yes.
I don't think he's the worst. He's okay at sliding around.
Hold on. In the pocket, he does not move his feet well, but the good thing he has is his base because he's such a large body. He doesn't have to have good feet work.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think he senses pressure okay. I'm not going to sit there and say he's totally oblivious to pressure. He slides around in the pocket all right. I'm not going to say, I think I'm a little higher on him shifting around the pocket than you are. He's not going to be a guy like Mariota that runs into sacks because he has no idea where anyone is in the pocket and he can't operate from the pocket. Do I think he's going to take off and run? No. Obviously, you're right in that kind of sense. When you say concrete cleats, you might be right that he's not going to go break off a 20-yard run when the play falls apart, but you don't necessarily need that guy. Look at Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Tom Brady is not fast at all. He has a lot of rushes, but not for a lot of yards.
Not everyone's running the same system as the Patriots.
But he's very, very good at shifting around in the pocket when he needs to. He's good at sensing pressure, and he's good at avoiding sacks because he can move around. Drew Brees is the same way. He's not fast. You don't need to be fast. You just need to be smart with how you move. The question is going to be, can he develop his game in that kind of aspect? I don't know. I'm not a Dwayne Haskins guy, but I think this is a little bit unfair criticism towards him.
That's what all the experts are saying. It's what the tape says.
All right, Drew. Well, that's what I've been. I can only tell you what I've seen. Okay, and again,
You're our next
time. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for that. That helps me. That healed my soul a little bit.
You can bring it back this way.
Are you an expert?
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, man. You guys, you hear him?
Going forward here. Obviously, I think we'll call it a wrap for the rest of the show. We're going to talk basketball here either on Wednesday or on Friday before these games go out. So we want to talk about the Elite Eight and the Final Four going forward. So for Sports Around the Bar, Drew, we've got some special thanks. It's been a fun show. I know we leaned a little bit on football like we usually do, but it was fun. We talked about a lot. I had a good time.
Guys, I appreciate all your comments, all the likes, all the shares. We love all of it. It's great talking sports with you. It blows our mind how much you guys enjoy talking with us, but we do want to give special thanks out there to everyone that get a comment, and if I missed you, I'm so sorry. But Jeremy, Sharif, Deo, John, Shay, Gregory, Gary, Nate, Ken, Steve, Charlie, Sonny, Chris, Eddie, Brian, Bo, you guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Okay, now take a breath. You made it all the way through there. Absolutely, guys. We appreciate each and every one of these comments. It was a fun show. I'm glad we got to talk football. Again, our favorite sport, but we love every sport as well. We'll be back to talk basketball. I'm sure there'll be some more football news in there somewhere. And everything else with you guys on Wednesday. So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and we will see you guys next time.
See ya.